Well, this really is the best time of year for gardeners. All that hard work finally paying off and people are enjoying their bounties. Zucchinis, tomatoes, cucumbers, they all need to be harvested before frost. And then you'll have to figure out what to do with all those beautiful beets and carrots. But there is a limit to how much produce you can eat at one time. So how do you go about preserving this garden goodness so you can enjoy it in the colder months? Today on Blue Sky, we're going to take you to a new U-Pick market garden where you can stock up. Even if you didn't have a good garden year of your own. And then we'll be joined by someone who's passionate about preserving. So get your canning, pickling, and dehydrating questions ready. Bonus points if you call us while you're processing some of your veggies. We'd love to hear about your tips and tricks. And hey, have you ever canned pumpkin? Give us a call, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. We know there are a lot of listeners who grew up with parents or grandparents processing giant gardens. But the art of canning is not something many young people are learning these days. And that is something Justine Wheeler wants to change. She's the principal and outdoor ed teacher at Bullies School. And that is where we've reached her right now. Welcome to the show.
Thanks. We're happy to be here today.
Hi, Justine. And I see next to you, you've got Emma. We'll be talking to her in a bit, one of your students.
Yes.
Awesome. So, Justine, I'll just say the first question off the bat here. Have you ever canned pumpkin?
Sorry, I'm just going to wait for the bell. We're very live action right now. Sorry, that was a long bell.
I didn't even hear it.
Oh, well, that's good. I have never canned pumpkin before.
Okay, but what are you canning with your students? Tell us about your own love of canning and preserving. Where did that come from?
So at the school, we are actually canning salsa. We have a garden. This is our second season with the garden. Nutrient has supported us with that. And we grow tomatoes and salsa and peppers. We had zucchini last year. We've got strawberries. We've got so much. So we have been canning salsa and selling it.
And what has that been like for students to learn that skill?
Want to talk about this one?
It's good. So when you're in like high school, you do cooking and stuff. So it helps prepare you for that.
And had you ever done anything like this before, Emma?
We did it last year.
Well,
we made salsa.
And when you first...
We did the canning process.
You did the canning process? Okay, how did it taste? Did you get to taste test it after?
Yeah, it was really good.
It was really good? And Justine, tell me about bringing this to the classroom. You know, like, it's a lot of work to can, I think. It involves very hot water and a whole process that is unfamiliar to me. So to do that with students, what's the setup?
So first we started with the salsa. So we brought everything into the classroom and I did blanch the tomatoes with the kids, which was an adventure for sure. But we first start by talking about safety. So we are touching hot things. How do we deal with this? When we're doing the water with the salsa, again, safety. We have the special tongs for those canners out there. They know that you have tongs to get the cans out of the water bath. So lots of safety stuff. And then we went over knife safety because the kids actually cut the tomatoes, cut the onions, and did everything. So lots of safety stuff. They did that. We threw it into a big roaster and the whole school got to smell the salsa cooking. So that was really good. And then we water kick bathed them. So yeah, it was great.
And just tell me a bit more, Justine, about your own experience learning this. I got caught off guard there by the bell. So just tell me again, how did you learn to do this? What is your own personal story and connection to canning?
So my mom used to do it all the time. Growing up, we had a huge garden. We had 4 kids, so we grew a lot of our own food. And mom canned tomatoes all the time. It was lots of canning of tomatoes. She made her own salsa. So I got to see it in my own life. And then as an adult, I have a garden and I like to preserve my own food. So that's something just that I have learned and taken. And then it's great life skills for kids. Like a lot of the kids, some of them don't know where their food comes from. It comes from the grocery store, but they don't understand exactly where it comes from or how to process it. So it's great life skills to teach the kids. So just my own experience has kind of brought that into the school.
So tell me about your own kitchen. Are you doing things differently than your elders? Do you have a different approach? Are you doing as much canning? Are you throwing tomatoes in a bag and freezing them and not bothering with doing more than that?
Like some of my fruit and stuff I have just kind of thrown in a bag and frozen it, and those are things that I'll pull out for smoothies and stuff. But tomatoes, I love canning tomatoes. Homemade spaghetti sauce with canned tomatoes is great. I do salsa. I have made spaghetti sauce. I've canned some peaches. When the BC peach truck comes in, I buy some of those and I do some of that canning. Pickles, that's something I have started doing with my in-laws. And those are things that I'm also teaching my own kids, is how to can pickles.
Nice, nice. Emma, do you see yourself doing this at your own home, or do you think it's sparked interest in you to think about gardening and preserving it later in life? Do you think this is something you'll stick with?
Learning how to do it, and I think I'll probably teach my brother how, because I don't think he knows. And he's older than me, so.
Oh, he's
I'll
older
teach
than you.
him. Yeah. So, and then maybe we can do like canning stuff at home.
What would you like to can next? Do you like peaches? Would that be on your list?
Probably.
Probably, yeah. Justine, just talk about what you do with the salsa after, because this is part of a whole production. It doesn't just end with canning. So you got the salsa, then what?
So then what we do is we have fancy little labels. We talk about what's in the salsa, and then we actually sell it. So every year our school does a craft show, and we have a bake table that our students put up. It's a great event. And then last year we sold the salsa, and we just got a new inclusive play structure. So all of our funds from our salsa came to our play structure. So a lot of what we're doing is the kids are planting it, they're taking care of the garden, they harvest it, they process it, they sell it, and then all the funds come back to our school for different projects.
Do you notice a change in your kids as they go through that whole process?
Well, they enjoy it. They really, really enjoy it. It's really engaging. It's hands-on learning. One of my students had said the 4-H motto is you learn to do by doing. And it's great because that is how our kids are learning. They're doing it and they're learning. So it's a great cycle. And of course, they get to taste it. We had nachos and salsa across the school, so that was a great event as well.
Sounds fun. You do more than just the salsa. You also have chickens. Do you want to talk about that?
They are coming.
Oh, they're coming.
So last year we hatched eggs. They went to a farm for the summer. And this weekend, actually, we're going to have a very big chicken coop come that was built by another school in our division. And we are going to have chickens stay with us, and we will use those eggs. And the eggs are going to go to our breakfast program, and we're also going to cook with them. So very cyclical. And then the compost from the chickens is going to go back into our garden.
Emma, what do you think about this?
Well, I have chickens at my house, and I really like them because you can, like, if you hang out with them a bunch, then they actually just stop and then you can pick them up. And it's really nice.
Chickens are very, very friendly. You know, Justine, Emma makes an interesting point that she's got chickens at home, and you are from Boulier. Sorry, I said the name of the town wrong at the start there, Boulier. So most kids would have connection to the land in some way. Would they not in Boulier?
It kind of depends on our population. So some of our families are farmers, some of them are not. So we're a mix, a good mix of farmers and not farmers.
Yeah. So then do you see a lot of skill sharing between those that do farm and those that don't?
Yes. And like our community is very supportive as well. So if we're doing something, agriculture, not even agriculture, but anything, our community is here and there's a lot of experts and they help us out as well. So it's great. It's a great place to be.
Well, it's been great talking to you. I feel inspired to make some salsa, perhaps. Justine, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having us.
And Emma, thanks to you. Happy canning. Justine Wheeler is the principal and outdoor education teacher at Boulier School. Emma Becker is a grade 6 student. We've got someone on the line who's quite an expert when it comes to preserving garden produce. And we also have a caller on the line. So let's say hello to our caller. And then we'll go to Joel McCharles, who's the author of Batch, over 200 recipes, tips, and techniques for a well-preserved kitchen. But first, I want to hear from Kent, who joins us on the line in Regina. Hey there, Kent.
Hello.
So what's your tip or trick here when it comes to preserving garden produce?
Well, we've normally done it the same way as it says in the cookbooks and stuff. You make your brine, get all your pickles in the sealers, and you pour your brine in, and then you take all the jars and you put the lids on loosely, and you put them in the roaster, and you put them in the oven for 20 minutes and get them up to a certain temperature, and then you bring them out. And most of the time you get 80%, 90% of the lids seal. But you're slopping with this boiling water and stuff out of the oven afterwards. It's just it's annoying. So I was watching on I was watching on TV, and there was these commercials kept coming on for this thing that you put on. You're supposed to take your fresh veggies and to keep them longer, like when you buy the thing of raspberries or strawberries or grapes, and you just put them in a jar and you vacuum seal it down and they last longer. And I went, well, why wouldn't that work for preserving? And so I went online and I found these things online. They're not that expensive. You can get them shipped here out of Amazon. They ended up landed here for like $25. And all you do is you just put all your cucumbers and your carrots and your onions and your garlic and everything in the sealer, and you pour in your boiling hot brine, and you take your lids and you set the lid on. You put this sealer on, you push the button, it runs for about 20, 25 seconds, and you hear it go boink, and then you lift it off and you just run the little ring down and you're done. Now, the only thing that like no more into the oven in a tray with boiling water and a dozen sealers trying to fall over and stuff, right? So that's my tip.
Okay.
There are different kinds, and anybody that's going to try this, get the one where you can take it, the bottom comes off for the small lids or the big lids. It instead of having it all, anyway, whatever.
Okay.
They'll see it online.
Okay. And then you wait for the boink.
Well, no, it shuts off. It shuts off and it goes boink.
And
you lift this thing off, and that lid it's sealed, like it's sucked right down there. You got to wipe the rim, but before you do put the little lid on. But then you just run the ring, like the screw part. Just spin it down and set it off to the side.
So, Ken, what have you sealed this year? Before we let you go, I just want to know what kind of produce you've been making use of with that.
Okay, we have done. We're pushing over 200 jars of pickles. We're pushing, I'd say, about 50, 60 jars of. My wife calls it a relish, but I call it more like a salsa. And I did the little test to see how long it'll keep fresh fruit that you buy in the store. I put one of those in the thing, vacuumed it down, and I put it in the fridge. It's been in there for 2 weeks, and they look fine. There's no mold, there's no nothing on it or anything. So I'm very impressed with this device.
Well, I'm impressed that you called to tell us about it, Kent. This has been great. 200 jars of pickles? Like, that's something. Thank you for calling.
Well, no problem. You have a great day.
You too, Kent. That was Kent joining us in Regina with his 200 jars of pickles and his fancy sealing thing there. Very cool. Give us a call and tell us your own tips and tricks when it comes to preserving garden produce. 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Now, food preservation is Joel McCharles' jam. He's been joining us on the show at harvest time each year to help our listeners. He is the co-author of Batch, over 200 recipes, tips, and techniques for a well-preserved kitchen. Like I said, give us a call to share your own favorite technique or to get some advice on your own canning project. You might have a question, and Joel can probably answer it. So again, that's 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Joel is on the line right now. Hello.
Hey, I'm thrilled to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So where did your own love of canning and preserving food come from?
Oh, it started with hating it. My parents would preserve every year and I would run away. It looked like too much work. It looked too hot. It looked laborious and it looked troublesome. And I loved to eat it. That old story that old Mother Hubbard, I would come and eat it all, but I didn't like to preserve it at all.
Yeah, but then obviously something switched.
I went to a farmer's market and I saw a relatively famous Canadian chef, Jamie Kennedy, and he was carrying a whole flat of peaches and the sun was backlit on him in the morning in a perfect silhouette. And honestly, it was just this stupid, goofy moment that I was like, I want to be that guy. And within a year, I was living with 1,000 jars of preserves. So, there you go.
Yeah, the rest is history. Okay, well, What was your first project? Was it those peaches or did you try something else?
No, so I actually went home. I took my partner, who's still my partner, Dana, and she and I went up to my parents' house and we learned how to make strawberry jam, which is super easy to make. Could I make a really quick comment about Kent's tip is just be very, very careful with that. I'm glad it's working for Kent, but there's some really significant safety risk with that. When you're canning, the object is to bring everything in the jar up to a certain temperature while you boil it under water. Even the oven method that he mentions is used in the UK, but not really used in Canada. And I'm glad it's working for him. The challenge is that you're not raising everything in the jar to the right temperature. The object isn't just to seal the jar. It's actually to cook everything in the jar when it's low acid or risky acid. So a friend of mine in the canning community says she can seal her old underwear in a jar. It doesn't make them safe to eat. just hearing the pop doesn't mean that it's safe.
Oh, okay.
I'm glad it's working for him, but I would be very cautious to tell anybody to do that. I wouldn't.
Yeah, that's fair. To each their own. But you didn't like the fact that canning was this hot, kind of messy, challenging thing. So you obviously are still doing the old school way of doing it. Or what have you learned over the years? I guess you got air conditioning.
Well, we learned that there were 7 different styles of preserving, and I do canning as well, but I don't do a ton of canning anymore. Canning often involves a lot of sugar. For jams, for example, or a lot of vinegar with pickles. So you mentioned sauerkraut in the trailer early on, which is fermenting, and you let it sit on your counter, like super easy, no risk, no nothing in there. Learning to use my freezer better was a great way to learn how to do that. Also, canning changed for me when I realized that you could use a burner outside, so that you could start to water bath outside, so that you didn't have to heat your whole kitchen.
Oh, there's so much to talk to you about, and we've got a couple of emails, but let's start with an email. So Lois writes, my canning question is, which is better, to blanch corn on the cob or cut the kernels off the cob and then blanch it, then put it in jars and then can?
So when you freeze things like this, blanching it is a quick process, quick cooking, dip them in the water, pull them out, and freeze them. I think it's a great question. I like to do it before cooking it. I find they come off the cob better, but really whatever way works for you works well. You want to make sure that it's really dry when it goes into the freezer. So I like to let them sit. I just scatter the kernels on kind of a cookie tray and let them steam dry, especially when you toss them out when they're first dry. You can even leave them in a spaghetti strainer if you have to. And if they're dry, then they won't freeze together in pieces if there's any water there.
How else are you using your freezer better? I am interested in this. I made some quick jam. We've got these jostaberry bushes that are one of our community garden sites, and so a fellow gardener was telling me to pick them and kind of do something on the stove. So I just put a tiny bit of sugar. I put some chia seeds to thicken it. Turned out great. Then I put it in a jar, let it cool, and I threw it in the freezer. And I've been pulling them out every so often. I also did that with rhubarb and strawberry, and that's probably as far as I'll go in terms of effort to make some kind of jammy type thing. That's my story. How are you more effectively using your freezer?
I think the biggest thing, you were talking about pumpkin earlier, which you can pressure can or freeze. So you can do that either way. In the past, what I would have done with something like pumpkin is I would have cubed it up, I would have blanched it, and I would have thrown it in the freezer. I find that it's far if you don't mind the texture, I far prefer making it into puree and even cooking it down a little bit. And the reason I do that is kind of twofold. Number one, it takes less room in the freezer, right? A bag of pureed pumpkin takes less room than all the air of all those cubes that do. It lays flatter, which is a lot nicer. But also the second reason is I find it preserves better because there's less surface contact with any air that's in the bag and the actual fruit. If you have cubes of pumpkin or fruit or strawberries, there's lots of air all around them. But when it's a puree, there's only air around the outside and only the little air that's in the bag. So I think if I had one freezer tip, it would be to puree. If you're going to end up using it like a sauce, tomatoes, for example, just throw them in the blender first and throw it into a bag and freeze it flat in a bag.
And that's it? You wouldn't do anything else to them? You would just blend them up?
If I had time, I would cook them. I would cook them because the truth is I'm going to cook them down in the winter anyway, and they'll take less room in the freezer if I cook them a bit now. So, I like to make it as small as possible because I have very small freezer space.
The pureed pumpkin, what would you do with that later in the year?
Pumpkin pie dessert, throw it into ice cream, put it on toast, put it into a muffin recipe, add it to soup. There would be lots and lots of different ways to use that. Stir it into rice. You put it into a soup to thicken it and add some flavor into it.
Any freezer fails that you've learned from?
Yeah, we all have those fails. It's always that mystery bag in the bottom of the freezer that you don't know what it is, when it is, or how it got there, and who put it there. Had to be somebody else. My father is the best freezer that I know. He'll go to the store, he repackages everything in white butcher paper, clearly marks it, has a first in, first out system where he has a box for meat and a box for other things, and he stacks them vertically instead of horizontally, so he can pull a whole box out and pull things from the front and put new stuff at the back. I mean, if you want to be really meticulous, these
are the tips that everybody needs to hear. I do have a friend who freezes a lot, preserves a lot. And I was like, so do you keep a spreadsheet? Like, because I am the person who finds something at the bottom of the freezer, and we have a very small freezer, and I'm guilty for not knowing what's in there. So all the tips and tricks, they're helpful, Joel. I'm Leisha Grabinski. You're listening to Blue Sky. It's Canning Line. Give us a call today, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Kevin writes, so canning is a hobby that I fell into by accident during the pandemic times when I bought a pressure canner to use in the process of cultivating mushrooms, another pandemic hobby, and subsequently felt like I should learn how to use the pressure canner to its fullest potential. So I started out learning to make homemade soups and stews, and from there it just escalated to learning jams and jellies and different types of pickles. I'm currently working on turning my garden cucumbers into spicy garlic pickles. That's from Kevin. You can send us an email to bluesky@cbc.ca or give us a call, 1-800-716-2221. Mushrooms. Joel, have you ever done anything with mushrooms?
Yeah, absolutely. And Kevin, I love that you're doing that because so many people are scared of pressure canning, and it sometimes is the evolution of where we get to with jams and jellies because they're so easy to do. So I think that's amazing. For mushrooms, I mean, pressure canning is awesome, but dehydrating mushrooms are just so easy and so good. One of the ways, if you have regular mushrooms in your fridge, like white button tops or cremini, one of the easiest ways to dehydrate a mushroom is to literally set them on a cookie rack, just in open air in your kitchen. Don't have them touching each other so that the air can escape. And most mushrooms will dehydrate naturally just sitting in the open air of your kitchen. You can then rehydrate those in hot water or put them in the blender and turn them into a powder. And I'll tell you, one of the greatest cooking tricks in my arsenal is, when you're making chili and you've got that layer of fat, or a soup or a stew, and you've got the layer of fat across the top, many of us skim that off because we don't like the mouthfeel of it, but we know we're getting rid of flavor. And one of the best things you can do is take some of that dehydrated mushroom powder, scatter it across the fat, and because the mushrooms are dehydrated, they will absorb the liquid that they touch. Ooh. And so they will absorb the fat, and that layer of fat will disappear into the mushroom powder. You can stir it right into your chili or sauce or whatever you're doing, and you'll have no layer of fat. You'll have all of that flavor and all the nutrients that come with it, and it's super awesome.
That sounds delicious. Joel, I want to ask you if there's anything that you would be intentionally picking up at the market right now, maybe something you didn't grow, but it's a really good time to buy it and preserve it, because we will be checking in with this U-Pick operation in just a second. But what would you be wanting to pick up right now?
Yeah, listen, you mentioned carrots. Pickled carrots are amazing, but I love the idea of this U-Pick garden, the idea to pick a carrot. A carrot can lose its sweetness in the first 4 or 5 hours. And if you've never had a garden out of the ground, like, make sure that you buy some for your mouth, not just for your jars. But certainly, beets right now, tomatoes right now, anything you can get your hands on, anything you can buy in the center of the grocery store, if you've got the right equipment and knowledge, you can make.
Love this. I'm speaking with Joel McCharles. He is the author of Batch, over 200 recipes, tips, and techniques for a well-preserved kitchen. We've got a caller on the line. I'll get to you in just a moment, but I want to check in with Jared Regier. So if you are listening in Saskatoon right now and you've got a bit of FOMO, the fear of missing out because you didn't have a big garden this year, well, that's why you should meet Jared. Jared Regier is with Blossom Grove Family Farm. They recently opened this U-Pick vegetable operation just outside of the city. So you get to enjoy the fun of harvesting vegetables without having had to water and weed all summer. Jared is on the line to tell us a bit more. Hi, Jared.
Good afternoon, Leisha.
So I think you've been listening to a bit of the show. We've done a few things here. You used to be a teacher, right? And you heard the teacher talking about canning salsa with her grade 6 students. Were you able to share that knowledge with students when you were a teacher?
Yeah, I was lucky to be able to develop an independent program that worked outside of the regular school schedule, and we had the privilege of being able to incorporate a lot of food production, like the growing of food, and then using it in our classroom for meals and activities like the preservation one that you described here earlier. So that was definitely a focus of the program that I was working in, yeah.
And then your project has really evolved since that time because you're no longer teaching. So what is this U-Pick operation that you've just begun?
Yeah, well, it's not my first foray into farming. I started farming when I left teaching in 2014, and I started farming with no owned land or fancy machinery. I just had the interest and the motivation and the drive. And so I started using borrowed backyards and public boulevards in Saskatoon to produce food. And I ran my my farm like that for many years, but I was still itching for more land security all this time and the ability to get into more permanent production with trees and perennial crops. So when we had the opportunity recently to move out to this 3-acre parcel, we jumped on it and we're able to start up our production again here. But now we can do something that we couldn't do in the city, and that is include people in the process of growing and harvesting this food. It didn't make sense to do that kind of thing when our plots were scattered all over the city, but I recognized this long for people or from people to be involved with that process. My plots were all very public, and I couldn't work in the garden for 15 minutes without someone strolling by and starting to chat with me about something. So I learned that there's this drive for people to reconnect with their food. And finally, now we got this ability to do so on with our new setup here.
Yeah, there's an appetite for it. So how does it work? People are familiar with berry U-Picks, apple orchards, that sort of thing. But what would they find if they came to your farm?
I think the simplest way to describe it would be to think back to the past. What you mentioned at the start of the show, we used to have our parents might have had the farm property, and they used to plant a big garden there, and the family would come out and harvest at different times. They'd cooperate with the process along the way, and everyone would leave with a share of that food from that large garden. And as we've lost touch with some of that connection to our heritage in this property, losing the family farm, we don't have that place anymore where we can go to each of our families to gather that abundant harvest in fall. So we wanted to create that kind of atmosphere here. It's a massive garden with all the typical crops that you would find in a large household garden. We've got carrots, beets, onions, garlic, winter squash, potatoes, apples galore, and people can come feel like it's their own garden, except they skipped the planting, they skipped the weeding, they skipped the irrigation, the transplanting. They can just see the crops develop throughout the summer as they're here at different times and enjoy the harvest when it's time to do that.
So how does the pricing work? How have you figured out what to charge people to come and do this?
The pricing is by pound, like a pretty typical U-Pick where you pick however much food that you want, and we weigh it on the way out.
And is it comparable to a farmer's market, grocery store? How did you figure that out?
I measure all of the time and the cost of production for each of my crops. So I'm a spreadsheet guy. And so when I transferred my crop pricing from my market pricing, what I would usually charge to deliver something to someone's door or sell it at market, there were some crops that decreased significantly if it had a lot of labor component. Like carrots, takes me a long time to dig and wash and bag a carrot. So the price went down significantly for carrots. Other crops like your winter squash that I can pick off the ground pretty quickly. Doesn't change a whole lot for a U-pick operation, but in that case, the kids have more fun. The family can still benefit from just the exploration and the discovery element there as well. But
that's so interesting.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, though, when people come to pick, are you able to have that kind of conversation with them so they understand the amount of work that went into getting the carrot in the ground for you to pick, and then you're kind of connecting the dots or helping people connect the dots between what it takes to actually get food on our dinner tables?
Certainly. Yeah, that's one of the benefits. Where else can you gather your food while talking to a farmer about the whole story and actually see the farmer face to face and the whole process that went into the production of your food?
I interrupted you.
Exactly.
You were eager to say something. I want to hear what you were going to say prior to me interrupting you. Something that the kids are the most.
About how the cost compares, and that's a common question that producers will get. And I think one of the cost discussions that's not happening that's really important is the discussion about the environmental cost of this food. It's significantly decreased if we can produce food like this in our local communities and not have the packaging, the processing, the transportation that's involved with bringing all of the food in from other countries. So my dream is to just spawn thousands of these little farms around our country so that we can have communities that are dependent on these local farms and support the local food production and eventually produce food at a much lower environmental cost.
As I've been talking to you, Jared, there's been some photographs of your farm operation, and people will be able to see that when we post this show on our YouTube channel. But I noticed some very big Rubbermaid bins and a high shelf filled with onions. So because today's show is about preserving garden produce, I want to know what are some of the tips and tricks that you've gained over the years to preserve some of the stuff that you've grown so you can feed your own family.
Yeah, the photo that you're referring to is a photo of our cold storage room. I recognized pretty early on that cold storage was a crucial element of my storage game. I didn't want to sink my teeth into a mushy frozen carrot in April that had been steamed just to bring it back to life. I wanted a crisp, sweet carrot in April still. And it's possible with a good storage crop like carrots to achieve that and have a year-round carrot supply. And my path to accomplishing that required a cold storage room. So we built a fully controlled cold storage room in our basement at our house that regulates the temperature year-round. And when I pull a carrot or batch of any crop out of the ground in July, August, September, October, I can always put it into this cold storage room and preserve the value. It's like my bank of money, but it's my bank of food. And as a market gardener, those two, the line between the bank of money and bank of food is very gray. So there's a lot of value in both of those things, and it's just as important for me to preserve my food as it is to preserve my money in a bank somewhere.
I could keep talking to you, Jared, but we've got some callers on the line who want to get some questions in. But just one tip that maybe you could pass along to people who want to store things maybe in their own basement. Do you wash the potatoes or carrots before storing them? We may have lost.
Potatoes are best not washed. The skin stays in the best shape and resist having any damage during the washing process. If you can cure the potato for 7 to 10 days at 15 to 20 degrees Celsius in a moist environment that's breathable, if you can do that with your potatoes and then get it into a breathable sack and store that in cold storage, it'll do well for you without being washed at all. Carrots, I like to wash immediately, cut the tops off, get them into a Rubbermaid bin, dry them before that. We could talk about more details if you want. I don't know how detailed you want to be, but
well, how about
definitely
this?
Wash our carrots first.
If you've got time, you can stick around. We're on the air for another 15 minutes. I want to get to our callers, and who knows, maybe you can answer it, Jared, or our other guest, Joel. So if you've got time, hang out, listen. I could maybe go back to you if you got to run because you've got a whole farm that you're dealing with. I understand. So, but it's been great. It's been great getting a sense of what you've been doing lately. So thank you for being with us, Jared.
You're welcome.
All right. Okay. So let's see who is on the line. We've got Elmer in Regina. Let's go to Elmer. Hello.
Oh, hello. I just wanted to talk about sterilizing those glass jars with the screw top, the glass top, and that rubber sealer, the
vacuum
like thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know the best way to sterilize it is with one of those large metal cauldrons, and you have to put a tea cloth on the bottom of that cauldron to avoid the superheating of those jars because they'll break. So anyway, you fill the jar with water, and you also fill the cauldron with water, and get it to boil. With the water will start boiling inside the jar too to sterilize the jar. So when you take the jar out, be careful; it's very hot, and you just put it on the table, let it cool. But you turn the jar down on another like tea towel to let the water drain out. And you have to sterilize the rings and the glass top, but not the rubber thing because it'll deteriorate. And then you just, when you put those pickles in, you put as many pickles in as you can. You kind of push them in till it's completely full. You don't want a lot of water in there. And if it's dill, you can put those dill stems in or whatever formula you have, a little, whatever formula, if it's a vinegar pickle or a dill pickle. And you just do that cooking, making that brine, and you pour it inside the jar while it's hot, and you let it cool, but don't let it cool too much because what you want to screw the top on while it's still quite warm, so that it'll, when it starts cooling off, because of the it's hot, it expands and then it contracts when it's cool, then it'll seal itself, and you might have to tighten it a little bit more, the ring, and that should be able to. Sterilization is important because you can have something growing inside there, right? If you don't sterilize those jars,
yeah.
And then put it in the basement on a basement shelf near the wall or something like that where it's cool, and on a wooden shelf that's closed in. You have a curtain to close it, and for those like corn or carrots, you usually can steam them if you put them in water and cook them. It's only briefly to kind of sterilize them a little bit and to pre-cook them because you're going to take them out and cook them again anyway. So you don't have to cook them very much, corn or carrots, and you put them in those Ziploc plastic bags. You don't need anything more complicated than that.
Just a plastic bag.
The Ziploc, those like a lunch bag, even with a zipper on it, you just put them in there, and they're easier to handle. And it doesn't take up so much space in your freezer. But that's the way we used to do it, and didn't have any problem. No one ever, became ill. There wasn't any growth in those containers, any bacteria, anything like that.
Yeah.
And those metal things, those metal cans that people used to make, they were actually, we had a set like that, and actually you would have to fold it. There was a thing you would crank, and to make the circle, whatever size, you'd have to fold the metal. And there was an epoxy glue, but it would leak. My dad said he never was quite. You had to open it from the outside, obviously,
right. And
sometimes you would solder it. But of course, those are heavy metals, and those metals can deteriorate, and it could be toxic. I don't think anybody would use metal now, but
Elmer, it's interesting. You've raised a few good things. I want to go back to Joel to just pick up on what you've said, but all I have to say is, I'm in way over my head when it comes to canning. Like, I wouldn't even really know. But, oh my gosh, do I ever miss my grandma listening to this show? And I think a lot of people might be feeling the same way, just thinking about her pickles and all that. Joel, anything you want to add to what Elmer shared there?
Yeah, a couple of really quick tips. Canning typically, what Elmer's saying is you boil the jars first, and that gets rid of anything that's in them. And he puts a tea towel down to stop the connection between the glass and the metal bottom of your pan, which can explode them. You can also use a pizza rack, which also works really well in there, or any type of tray that just separates them from the bottom. Two things I do fairly significantly from Elmer is that most pickling recipes call you for reboiling the jar once they're complete, and usually you store them now with without the rings on them. The reason being is if there are any contaminants in there that start fermenting or otherwise, you want the lid to be able to freely pop off. And if a lid pops off, it's a sign that it's spoiled. And then you just get rid of that jar.
Right. Okay. Let's go to another caller. I'm curious to know what Gayleen has to say. Gayleen is joining us in Saskatoon. Hello. Welcome to the show.
Hello. Shades of my mother. She had a huge garden. We ate really well all winter. I'm wondering, do you have any tips for sweet dill pickles? She used to make 5 or 6 kinds, but that's what I liked.
Mm-hmm. Cool.
You know, I can tell you there are so many good recipes for sweet dill pickles, and that's where I would start rather than freelancing it, is looking up something that you like. But having said that, here's a really easy way to make sweet dill pickles without work, without any heat, without any extra, really almost no work whatsoever. If you have a jar of pickles that you already like and you're eating it and it's in your fridge and you're down to the brine that's in the jar, you ate your last pickle and you're totally bummed out that you're out of pickles, you can just chop up a cucumber and drop them into that brine, into that jar, and put it in your fridge. And within 3 or 4 days, you'll have something called a quick pickle. It'll be really crisp because it's a fresh cucumber. They'll last for months in your fridge like that. You don't need to boil them. You don't need to turn anything on, and you can even throw other ingredients in there. You can throw carrots in there. You can throw jalapeno peppers in there. You throw whatever you want in there, and really, that's a great way to extend a jar of pickles.
Gayleen, what do you think?
That sounds cool, but I definitely have to make the brine myself because unless you can buy it. I've never seen sweet dill pickles available in the store.
Yeah, if you haven't, you can take that regular brine of a dill pickle and add some sugar to it and do the quick pickle just as I said it. Like if that's one that you like, but for sure, really easy to modify. Sugar doesn't change the acidic balance of anything there, so and in your fridge, it's perfectly safe.
I love this, Gayleen. Thanks for calling.
You bet.
Nice to hear from you. That's Gayleen in Saskatoon. There's a few minutes left. You could call us, 1-800-716-2221. You can also email bluesky@cbc.ca. Joel, I like how your style. I'm picking up what you're putting down here, and I'm thinking that perhaps you're suggesting one of the biggest changes when it comes to canning. So thinking of my grandma who made the pickles the proper way. I'm so into quick pickles because I work full time and I'm living a totally different life than she did. And I'm noticing that you're sharing a lot of tips that take less time, that are maybe less labor intensive. Is that the biggest change that you've seen when it comes to preserving food?
It's the gateway entry point. So if you start getting some wins there, then you'll invest some bigger time in doing some of those bigger projects. But the other thing is, we often throw away 15 to 30% of what's in our fridge. And if we learn a couple of really simple preservation techniques, like if you have peaches, you just mentioned you're bringing in peaches from across the country and they're amazing, and you're about to go away for the weekend and they're about to spoil. Throw them in the blender, throw a bit of honey in them, put them in the fridge. You don't even have to cook them. You will have a fresh jam. And because what you've done is you've removed the air contact from the majority of the peach. And by putting it into the cold and putting that in that, you could make jam like instantly. It's better if it's cooked, it's thinner, it's thicker. But man, we don't need to throw out the food that we're throwing out.
Yeah.
And especially today when it's so expensive.
Isn't that true? And, in some ways, what's old is new again, because even though I think people are looking for a faster way to preserve food, there is this interest in being in the kitchen and knowing where your food comes from. And so I'm curious about what you do in your other life when you're not canning, and just how important it is to do something with your hands in the kitchen and to have that connection to food.
Yeah, I've been in corporate business for over 25 years. I work in AI as a consultant to senior executives. Incredibly different from the time that I spend in my garden, the time that I spend pickling and preserving and sharing my love for it.
Yeah, and how important is it to have that outlet?
I think it's tremendously. I think to be connected to our food is connecting ourselves to ourselves. I love what Jared's doing and bringing people into the garden, letting people see it and feel it, and engaging kids like your earlier guest too. I think it's all amazing.
We have another caller on the line that we can go to quickly. Blaine in Hudson Bay. Hello, Blaine.
Hello. I was just going to let you know that I do can pumpkin,
Oh, you do?
and I do, and I have great success with it. I like it canned because it lasts longer, and I use it all year. And I have a very small freezer. I prefer to can my food rather than freeze it.
All right. So you do can pumpkin. Well, I love that, Blaine.
Yeah, you can can pumpkin, and I do a lot of canning. I have a pressure cooker. I can fish and meat and broth, bone broth, and there's tons of stuff, and it seems to work really well for me.
Well, thanks for picking up the phone and calling us. I appreciate it, Blaine.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Take care. Blaine, who cans pumpkins and all sorts of other things. Darlene sent us an email. Darlene writes, with all of the variety of tomatoes, including low-acid tomatoes, is it safer to add some citric acid to each jar before canning? And if so, how much? My tip for dill pickles, I use a slow pasteurization process now. Works great and doesn't cook the pickles. Thanks for the show today. Darlene, thanks for emailing. Joel, what do you think? Should she be adding some citric acid?
So I can only quote the safety standards that I know, and the biggest one in the world right now is the National Home Preservation Association. It's down in the States, NCHPA. But if you search up that, you will find it. And they do recommend now 1 to 2 tablespoons of citric acid or lemon juice. You can't taste it in a liter or a pint of, quart of tomatoes or tomato sauce.
Okay. Let's see. Do you ferment anything? We were talking about sauerkraut. Do you ferment?
Sauerkraut, fermented carrot pickles, so sweet dill pickles would be another way to do it rather than adding them in the vinegar brine. Fermenting is just adding salt and water to vegetables, letting them naturally pickle themselves. We've done Brussels sprouts. We've done all sorts of things within there. Yogurt, of course, is a classic ferment. Cheese is a classic ferment as well. Yeah.
But Brussels sprouts?
Yeah, Brussels. So if you think of sauerkraut or kimchi, those are cabbage, and Brussels sprouts are small cabbage. So you can, in our book, we fermented full Brussels sprouts, and so the outside of them is really sour and a little softer, of course, because they fermented longer, and the inside is more crisper. So there's a really range of textures as you eat them, and you can eat them cold like a pickle, or you can even warm them up and throw them into a stew or otherwise for something a little different.
Oh, that sounds great. Okay, let me squeeze in one more email here. Patty writes, I actually prep all my pie innards, apple, raspberry, blueberries, gooseberry, rhubarb, just as one pie recipe calls for, and freeze in a quart-size bag. Then I just poop it out into the pie shell and easy peasy bake it up. If I'm actually on top of my game and have the chance to defrost by putting the innards into a bowl a few hours up to a day ahead, that helps with bake time, but from frozen, it might take 15 to 20 minutes long time. Watch that crust doesn't burn and loosely cover with a tin foil if needed during the baking. Preserving failure, cooked beets. I did what I was told to do by Google, and I have a top grade pressure cooker, but later in the year, I just wasn't comfortable with the color of the beets. So I fed my composter with 12.5 liter jars. Yes, very big jars. Oh. So I guess it didn't go to waste. Yeah, it happens. Patty, thanks for writing. Joel, any last words before we let you go? If somebody feels intimidated to try, why should they try it?
Because they don't have to do all the work that they think they have to do. You chop something up and throw it into pickle brine tonight, and don't throw it into your compost, and you will have pickles. You'll save money and you'll make something delicious, and it won't take you any work other than cutting up a cucumber.
And a favorite, like I want to try those Brussels sprouts, but if you're thinking of like your best meal that includes something that you've preserved, what would it be?
A homemade tomato sauce that's made with my parents and my family will never be beat by anything else.
Oh, that's so lovely. Joel, it's been great having you on the show today. What a lovely show. This was just fantastic. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too. Joel McCharles, author of Batch, over 200 recipes, tips, and techniques for a well-preserved kitchen. If you didn't get your email in, but you want to connect with us and tell us some stories about canning, I'm always here for it. bluesky@cbc.ca.